Hey Tapaceros, how's it going? It looks like we're actually getting straight back. Last week I made a small channel update saying, hey, when we start getting all this Phantom Forces stuff through, I'm going to actually start getting back into this. What happens? Following Saturday, CoroCoro leaks. We actually have the first cards from Phantom Forces. Now, we've been shown 4Xs in the stadium so far. The 4Xs being the entire Mega Gengar line, so Gengar EX, Mega Gengar EX, Dialga EX, and Aegislash. We've also been shown the stadium, Dimensional Valley. Now, where to start really? We do have Dialga EX. It's 180 hit point, basic X, Steel type, 2 attacks, Chrono Wind, which is Metal Double Colorless for 60 damage, don't know the effect, or Full Metal Impact, Double Metal, Double Colorless, 150 damage, we don't know the effect. So as you can see, I can't really say much about Dialga right now. We know we're getting a Dialga, we know it's got hit points, we know it's got attacks, but we don't know what the attacks do. And because we don't know what the attacks do, we can't really go into how viable the card will be. The effects on these attacks are going to be what makes or breaks the card. So, moving on from Dialga, let's actually move into Aegislash, our other basic Steel type. 170 hit points. The ability, Mighty Shield. Prevent all damage done to this Pokemon by attacks from your opponent's Pokemon with special energy attached. Now, that itself sounds good. It's got the attack, Slash Blast. For 3 colorless energy, you do 40 damage, plus 20 more damage for each metal energy attached. Now, this is unconfirmed, so it could be a case of the number could be a bit higher, or it might not be for each energy. As I said, it's unconfirmed, but right now the way we're looking at it is 3 metal energy to load up the attack, that's going to be 100 damage. 3 for 100 right now, and Landorus is going to be a thing, and it's going to be saying 90-30 for 1 energy potentially, which I will be covering later on. It doesn't seem too good. We do have Mighty Shield, so we just say, oh well, Landorus can't get that 1 energy Darkrai thing going on. There is no 90 damage if Landorus is swinging at Aegislash, but it's a whole case of how viable is the effect when you look at the entire format. When you look at what everything that's attacking, how viable is it to turn around and say special energy stops you doing damage? Now, oddly enough, this does kind of tie into what I said in the update video. We made mention of Sizor, the whole fact that he turns around and says, I like to stop special energies. And, well, this Aegislash is basically just Sizor Prime all over again. Similar ability and pretty much an identical attack, and Sizor Prime didn't see play because special energies weren't prevalent enough in the format. And sure, the format we have now, there's a lot of special energy running around, but but to be honest, there aren't a lot of decks that turn around and say, we rely on the special energy. The special energy is there for either a bonus or for convenience, not to actually make the deck work. So, Aegislash, maybe keep an eye on it, but personally I don't see it doing too much in the long run. Which actually brings us on to the star of today's show, and to be honest, this is probably what shows the most promise for me. We have Mega Gengar EX. It's Mega Evolution, 220 hit points, Psychic. It's going to have the Mega Rule on it, so we've not actually got an image in front of us, but the Mega Rule is going to go without saying. And it has the attack for a Psychic and Double Colorless. You can use Phantom Gate. Choose one of your opponent's Pokemon's attacks and use it as this attack. Now, people have turned around and said, oh well, that's going to be okay as long as you don't have to match energy requirements. The effect I've got in front of me right here doesn't mention the energy requirement, so guess what? Psychic Double Colorless is what you need. So here's Psychic, here's 2 Colorless. Now I'm going to turn around and I'm going to use any of your attacks, which is a bit of a double-edged sword. Certain attacks require certain setup. You can't turn around and say, I'm going to copy Keldio's Sacred Sword and do huge damage, because you're not going to have water energy attached to you. A few similar things can be said for copying other big cards in the format. Copying Landorus, well, you've got his Land's Judgment, but I believe he actually says you have to discard all fighting energy attached, so with no fighting energy to detach, you can't use its higher end damage. You can go for a double 30 snipe, but to me, I'm looking at Mega Gengar as a case of he's your situational card. I wouldn't build a deck around Mega Gengar himself. I'd actually build a deck around Gengar and say, oh, Mega Gengar? Yeah, that's an option I have. If you have something big and intimidating, I'm just going to go into Mega Gengar, I'm going to duplicate your biggest guy. It's like, oh, do you have something that does 200 damage? Well, have damage to your face. And to be honest, Psychic Double Colorless seems a bit big, but I'm going to get into why it's not much of a problem in a little bit. But before we get onto why it's not a problem, let's actually look at Gengar EX himself. So basic Psychic type, 170 hit points, which is not too shabby. For 1 colorless energy, you can use Night Attack. Place 3 damage counters on one of your opponent's Pokemon. Not the biggest attack, but it's not a bad attack either. Placing damage counters does mean that you do get around certain cards. Say your opponent's using a Hard Charm or Eviolite, well, it doesn't stop Night Attack. Night Attack will turn around and say, here's 3 damage counters, this is an effect. This is an effect from an attack, it's not actual damage. It's a case of you're taking this, you're basically burning your opponent instead of actually beating them down. Once again, 3 damage counters, it's not the biggest thing, but we have had it before where, you know, 30 damage at the right time in the right place can secure KOs later on. It's the whole reason why Darkrai's always been so good, because it had that little 30 snipe. It's like, oh, here's 90 damage up front, but that's going to 2-shot pretty much any X. Here's 30 on the bench, let's soften something up. Have you got any kind of bench sitter? Have you got anything with 120 hit points? Okay, well, 30 on that. If it ever finds itself active, it's going to be knocked out. The fact that it's 30 damage on its own, not as viable, not as offensive, but it could be usable for cleanup later on. And next we actually have what I think is Gengar's biggest trait, the thing that makes it just an absolute, it makes it potentially a monster. For a Psychic and Double Colorless, you can use Dark Corridor. You deliver 60 damage, your opponent's active Pokemon is now poisoned, and you switch Gengar EX with one of your bench Pokemon. Now, this might look very familiar to some more veteran players. Back when the Arceus set came out, we actually got a Gengar that was happily named Cursegar. He had a very similar attack. It was 3 energy, 60, do 10 to something on the bench, and retreat to your bench. Now, this was the same set where we got the famous Spiritomb, one that allowed you to evolve one of your bench Pokemon at the cost of putting a damage counter on it. It also had the happy little text that stated while it was active, both players were under trainer lock. Now, that itself was absolutely amazing, but it's the whole fact that we can do this again now. There's this happy little card called Trevenant that exists right now. It's a psychic type that's weak to dark, that turns around and says, while I'm active, your opponent's under trainer lock. Now, Gengar was very viable back in the day, and it was a whole fact that you were trying to set up a stage 2 and a basic. Now you're attacking with a basic, and you're setting up a stage 1. In my opinion, that's actually pretty good. It's the whole fact that it's a lot more streamlined than it used to be. Add into the fact that your main attacker now has all of the hit points, and you are pretty much set to go. There is one other thing though that I think bears mention when it comes to Gengar EX and using it in this way, and that's your choice of stadium. Now, a lot of people turn around and say, oh well, you're doing 60 and I'm poisoning them, go for Verbank. In my opinion, Verbank is a good option, but there is one that's better. It's actually the stadium that's been revealed to us through CoroCoro, Dimensional Valley. Each player's psychic Pokemon pay 1 less colorless cost to attack, meaning that Gengar EX's night attack is now free. Dark Corridor is psychic and colorless instead of psychic double colorless, so it's still 2 attachments. Well, instead of, oh, I need a psychic and a DCE, now it's a case of I need a psychic and another energy. And that in itself, to me, is amazing. It's a case of 2 attachments on a basic with 170 hit points. Who's struggling to do that? Who's really finding that so hard and near impossible to do? Personally, I see it being amazing. It's quick, it's easy, and the ability to turn around and say, oh well, here's upfront damage, here's poison, now you're under trainer lock. It's devastating on its own. The fact that you can get it quickly, effectively, consistently, it's even better. Add into the fact that, okay, you might be afraid that your opponent is just going to use something like Keldeo to get out of the situation. Don't let them. If they've got a Keldeo there, okay, here's a Sandray. Here's Catcher, here's a card to basically take your Keldeo, bring it into active. That's what I'm going to hit, and that's what I'm going to poison. Well, now they can't just go rush in, get rid of the poison, and put my main attacker safe on the bench. Now they've got their rushing guy stuck active, taking damage. You won't be able to take that option off their board. Now, a few people might actually turn around and say, well, okay, yeah, you're talking about Gengar, it's an old deck, it probably won't work. To be honest, this does also relate to another deck that's currently in the format. Exceldor's deck and cover. The major difference here is Exceldor turns around and says, here's paralysis. He also puts himself back in the deck, which means that, personally I think that Gengar, it's going to be easier to maintain, it's going to be a lot more consistent. They can both still run Dusknoir. In Furious Fist, we actually got ourselves a new Dusknoir line. That line came with a happy little Duskull that said, for 1 colorless, take a basic from your discount pile, put it on your bench. That's for 1 colorless, and it's psychic. So you can run a Dusknoir line to manipulate your opponent's energy and basically try and push for a harder game. But by doing so, you also have a Duskull that turns around and says, did you lose a Gengar early? Have you lost a Phantomp early? Hey, did you lose another Duskull early? Okay, well that's fine. Have you got your field spell? Yes? Okay. Put it back on your bench. There you go. You might lose Duskull, but it's the idea of turning around and saying, here's my 1 prize Duskull, you'll probably knock it out, no worries. I'm just going to put Gengar back on my bench. Hope you don't mind. I can see that being viable. I'm not saying it's a pro play, I'm not saying it's the best play, but I can see it being viable. With that though, I think I've heard quite a bit about Gengar and what I think he can do in the format. What do you guys think? Is there anything I'm missing, or just any fresh ideas that you guys have for how to run Gengar and Mega Gengar? If so, there's a comment section down below. Let me know. I want to hear all of your amazing ideas. And until next time, I've been Joey. You guys look top percent. Peace out.